I know it sounds crazy, but the moment he pointed at me, the moment he yelled for me to get out, I realized something was very wrong in my neighborhood, because this kid wasn't just loud, or rude, or spoiled. He acted like he owned the entire street, like he owned my backyard, like he owned me, and when he told me to leave the pool immediately, I didn't say a single word. Not yet. Because if he knew who I really was, if he knew the truth about my job, he would have run back into the house and slammed the door behind him. But he didn't know. Not then. Not until it was way too late. And what happened after that changed the entire HOA forever. Welcome back, everyone, to HOA Stories, where peaceful suburbs get messy fast. My name is Mark. I'm a 41-year-old homeowner living in a quiet community outside Phoenix. And I've spent the last few years dealing with HOA nonsense almost every week. I'm a pretty calm guy. I take care of my property. I follow the rules. I don't bother anyone. And if you really dislike bossy HOAs, if you've ever wanted to stand up to one, then you're in the right place. Before we get into the story, go ahead and hit subscribe. And if you've ever had an HOA mess with you, type "BOHO" in the comments so these people know we're not scared. Also, share this video with a friend who's been tortured by an HOA. Trust me, they'll feel this one. Alright, let's go back to the beginning. And I'll tell you how a spoiled teenage kid tried to kick me out of my own swimming pool, without knowing that I'm the sheriff of this entire district. I moved into this neighborhood because it looked peaceful, quiet, normal, the kind of place where people wave at each other, water their lawns, and mind their business. But the moment I signed the papers, I heard my realtor whisper something under her breath. Something I didn't understand at the time. She said, "Just stay away from Karen's house." Back then, I thought maybe she meant a dog, or loud music, or maybe they hosted too many BBQs. Nope. Nothing that innocent. Karen was the HOA vice president, and she acted like she was the queen of the entire zip code. But I didn't meet her immediately. And for my first few weeks, life actually felt nice. I woke up early for work, came home around 4, swam in my pool to relax, made dinner, watched TV, slept like a normal human. No drama, no problems. Then, summer break started. And with summer break came the reason this whole story exists. Karen's son, Tyler. I'm not a guy who judges teenagers. Kids are kids. They're still learning life, still maturing. But this kid, he didn't act like a teenager. He acted like a tiny dictator with a Wi-Fi password. Every day he walked around the neighborhood with a loud voice, big attitude, and a group of friends following him like he was running a small army. And if you dared make eye contact with him, he'd stare back like you owed him money. Still, I minded my business, as always, until one afternoon, a Thursday. I remember clearly because it was my first day off after a long rotation at work. The sun was hot. The pool water was perfect. And I thought I'd treat myself to a slow, quiet swim. I put my phone on the patio table, grabbed a cold drink, and slid into the pool, letting the water wash away a whole week of stress. For 10 minutes, it felt like heaven. Then, I heard it. A loud voice coming from behind the fence. Then footsteps. Then the gate to my backyard. The gate I always keep closed swung open. I wiped the water from my eyes, thinking maybe it was a delivery guy, or a neighbor accidentally opening the wrong gate. But instead, I saw 4 teenagers walk into my backyard, like they were arriving at a party. And in the middle of them was Tyler, Karen's son, the neighborhood prince, the kid who acted like he had a deed to everyone's property. He walked ahead of the group, chin high, hands on his hips, frowning like something displeased him. Then, he pointed at me, not waved, not said hello, not asked who I was. He pointed at me, like a teacher calling a kid to the front of the classroom. "Hey!" he shouted, voice cracking but loud. "You! Get out of the pool!" For a second, I thought he was joking. I looked behind me, thinking maybe his friends were playing a prank. Nobody was behind me. I was definitely the target. So I stayed quiet, leaning on the pool edge, letting the sunlight hit my face, pretending I didn't hear him. Tyler stepped closer. "I said get out," he repeated. "This pool is booked. We're using it today." Booked. I blinked a few times, because the sentence didn't make sense. "My pool is booked," I finally said. He nodded confidently. "Well, yeah. My mom runs the HOA. She said we can use any community pool we want." I pushed my hair back, looked around, and held in a laugh. Community pool? Man, this wasn't a community pool. This was in my backyard, behind my gate, next to my house. But his confidence was so strong, so unshakable, that for a moment, I almost admired it. Almost. Then he walked even closer, close enough that his shadow fell over the pool water, and he pointed at the ground like he was giving me a command. "Did you not hear me? Get out. We're swimming." His friends stood behind him, arms crossed, smirking, and one of the girls rolled her eyes at me, like I was a waiter who forgot her order. At this point, I could have yelled. I could have gotten out of the pool. I could have told him who I was. I could have flashed my badge. But something inside me said, "Wait. Watch. Let this kid talk." So I stayed in the water, as calm as a summer breeze. "Tyler," I said, "what makes you think this is a community pool?" He scoffed. "My mom said the HOA allows us to use any pool on this street if the owners aren't doing anything important. You're just swimming. So yeah, move." I swear, my face stayed straight. But inside my head, I was laughing so hard that I could feel tears forming. Because the kid wasn't just entitled. He was confidently wrong. Dead wrong. This is the moment where I should tell you, and the moment Tyler should have realized, who I really am. But I didn't. Not yet. I leaned back, resting my elbows on the pool edge, and said calmly, "Tyler, who told you you could walk into someone's backyard without knocking?" He frowned again. "I told you. My mom. She said we're allowed to do what we want. So are you getting out or not?" The girl behind him whispered, "Just tell him to leave, Tyler." Like my presence in my own house was ruining her summer. And that's when I saw the problem clearly. It wasn't just the kid. It was the parent who raised him, and the HOA that let it happen. But I didn't stand up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get angry. I just asked him one thing. One question, "Tyler. Are you absolutely sure you're allowed to be here?" He smirked. "Positive." "Why? What are you gonna do?" And that's when I knew. This neighborhood was about to change. If a teenager walked into your backyard and tried to kick you out of your own pool, what would you do first? Be honest. Tyler stood there, arms wide, chin up, like he was the king of my backyard, and his little army of friends stood behind him, smirking, waiting, acting like this was normal, like this was something they did all the time. But I wasn't moving. Not an inch. The water felt warm against my shoulders. The sun felt good on my face. And honestly, I was too tired from work to entertain some kid's fake authority. I just stared at him, calm, steady, letting him talk himself into a corner. "Look," he said, stepping even closer. "You don't have to make this a big deal. Just get out, dry off, and let us use the pool. We won't take long." He said it like he was offering me a discount at a store he owned. I raised an eyebrow. "You think you're being reasonable right now?" His jaw clenched. One of his friends snickered, and the girl in the red bikini whispered, "Oh my God, just do what Tyler says." Yeah. This kid needed a reality check. But not yet. Not until I understood just how deep this attitude went. So I rested my arms on the pool edge, and said gently, Tyler, this pool isn't a community pool. He rolled his eyes so hard I'm surprised his neck didn't crack. Yes, it is. My mom said so. I took a deep breath. Where did she say that? In the HOA book. He crossed his arms proudly. She said if a homeowner isn't doing anything important, the pool is accessible. I blinked. Accessible? Yes, he snapped, which means you're in the way. So get out. At this point, I couldn't tell if I was speaking to a teenager or a malfunctioning microwave that couldn't understand English. But the confidence, the unshakable confidence, was the part that bothered me the most. It meant he had done this before. It meant Karen had encouraged it. It meant they thought the HOA allowed them to walk anywhere, take anything, use anything, just because they wore the title of HOA family. I was about to respond, but Tyler suddenly stepped closer, stood right at the pool edge, and said, "You know what? If you won't move, I'll make you move." His friends gasped dramatically, like this was the finale of a reality TV show, and all eyes were on him. I leaned my head back, watching him silently. "Make me." He nodded with full confidence. "I'm giving you one last chance. I've dealt with hostile people. I've dealt with angry drunk men. I've dealt with fights. I've broken up domestic situations. I've walked into houses where everyone was screaming. So a teenager with chlorine breath and sunglasses wasn't exactly a threat. But something important had shifted. This was no longer a confused kid. This was a kid who thought he had power. The kind of power that comes from bad parenting, unchecked authority, and a mother who waved the HOA handbook like it was a royal decree. So I changed my tone. Not angry, not loud, just firmer. "Tyler, before you do something stupid, I'm going to ask you something." He rolled his eyes again. "What now? Do you know whose house this is?" He scoffed instantly. "Of course. It belongs to the HOA. And the HOA says." I stopped him with one small lift of my hand. "Tyler, think." I pointed back at the house behind me. "That building right there. Who pays the mortgage?" He hesitated for half a second. Not long, but enough to show doubt. Then he tried covering it. "My mom said we're allowed to come in if the gate isn't locked." I blinked slowly. "Tyler, the gate was locked." That's when he froze. Just a little. Just enough to tell me the truth. He had opened the gate, knowing it was locked, knowing it wasn't for him, knowing it was trespassing, and still, he doubled down. "It doesn't matter," he muttered. "My mom can do whatever she wants." There it was. The core of the issue. Not the kid. The mom. The HOA vice president, who probably walked around the neighborhood saying, "I run this place." I finally stood up inside the pool, water dripping down my shoulders, and said calmly, "Tyler, your mom doesn't own my property." His eyebrow twitched, a small, confused twitch, like his brain didn't compute the sentence. Then he snapped back. "Well, she said she does." Behind him, one of the boys whispered, "Dude, maybe this is a bad idea." But Tyler shoved him slightly with his elbow. "No, I'm handling this." Then he pointed at me again, this time with a hard stare. "Get off now." The words were slow, sharp, commanding, like he thought he was a drill sergeant. And that's the moment, the exact moment, I realized this kid truly believed the HOA was a kingdom, and he was royalty. I exhaled, long and slow, and said quietly, "Tyler, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to listen very carefully." He lifted his chin, ready to argue. But before I could continue, I heard the sound of heels clicking softly on concrete. Someone was walking around my house, approaching my backyard, and before I even turned around, I already knew who it was. Karen, the queen herself. She stepped into view, holding a clipboard, wearing sunglasses, lips tight, posture stiff, like she smelled something unpleasant. Her eyes went from me, to her son, to the pool, to my house, then back to me again, and she said the most ridiculous sentence I've ever heard in my life. "Well, why is there a stranger in our pool?" I swear, I almost slipped underwater from how hard my brain shut down. Our pool. Our pool. I stared at her, trying not to laugh, trying not to lose my mind, trying not to say something that would make this go nuclear. Tyler crossed his arms proudly beside her, smirking, like he had just summoned backup. "Yeah, Mom," he said loudly. "He won't get out. We told him the rules." Karen nodded slowly, as if she was analyzing a legal case. "I see. I see. Well, this is a violation." I tilted my head. "A violation?" She pointed her pen at me. "Yes. You are using an HOA pool without scheduling time." Ladies and gentlemen, I was standing in the swimming pool that I personally paid for, behind my house, behind my fence, behind the property line clearly marked in public records, and Karen was calling it an HOA pool. I knew right then this was about to escalate into something legendary. But not yet. Not until I said the one sentence that would flip their world upside down. What would you say to Karen in this moment? Be creative. I need the funniest response in the comments. Karen stood there like she was inspecting a crime scene. Sunglasses on, clipboard in hand, expression tight enough to crack concrete. Her son Tyler puffed up beside her, smirking like he had won something. His little fan club behind him, all whispering, all watching me like I was trespassing in my own backyard. And me, I was just standing there in the water, trying to understand how someone could live this deep inside a delusion. Karen tapped her pen twice, as if that made her more official. "Sir," she said, "this is an HOA-controlled property. You cannot use this pool without submitting a time request." I blinked slowly. "This is my pool." She tilted her head slightly, like she was listening to a toddler explain taxes. "No," she said calmly. "It is a shared neighborhood amenity." Shared. Amenity. Shared. I had to take a deep breath to keep from laughing, because she said it with full confidence, as if she personally built the house with her bare hands. Tyler crossed his arms proudly. "See, Mom," I told him. He didn't believe me. Karen placed a hand on her hip. "Well, he will now." She turned back to me, cleared her throat, and said, "You have 30 seconds to exit the pool." 30 seconds. I had spent years dealing with people who talked big, acted big, threatened everything, until the moment they found out who I am. And I knew this was the moment I needed to hold my silence. Not yet reveal anything. Not when things were this interesting. So I lifted my hands slightly above the water. "Karen," I said softly, "who told you this is HOA property?" She tapped her pen against the clipboard. "The handbook. Section 14. I frowned. Section 14 covers trash cans. She froze. Just a tiny bit. A small twitch of insecurity. Clearly she didn't know the book as well as she pretended. But she recovered fast. "Well, then it must be Section 15. I raised an eyebrow. "Section 15 is mailbox height." Her lips tightened. She flipped through the pages like she was searching for Narnia. Tyler leaned over to peek. There was nothing there. Nothing about private pools. Nothing about shared amenities. Nothing about walking into someone's backyard. But people like Karen don't back down. Not when they're wrong. Not when someone challenges their imaginary throne. She snapped the clipboard shut. "Sir, I don't have time for this. Get out of the water." Tyler took a bold step forward. "You heard her." His friends nodded. Some nervous. Some enjoying the drama. One girl whispering, "What if he calls the cops?" Karen laughed. An actual laugh. "Honey, the police can't do anything. The HOA has jurisdiction. Jurisdiction. I swear. I almost drowned from the stupidity. I took a step closer to the edge. Water splashing gently around me. Karen, I said, calm as ice. There is something very important you're not understanding. She lifted her chin. Oh, really? Yes, I said. Private property laws. Her smile widened. We're above those. Above. Laws. I placed my hands on the pool edge, leaned forward slightly, and felt the moment shift. Behind Karen, one of the teens' faces slowly dropped, as if they realized something wasn't right. But Karen kept talking. We run this neighborhood. We enforce the rules. We decide what is allowed and what isn't. Tyler whispered loudly. Tell him, Mom. I stared at her. You think the HOA outranks the law? We are the law here, she snapped. There it was. The moment her ego took full control, and dug her into a hole she would never climb out of. I reached for the edge of the pool, pulled myself up, water dripping onto the concrete, and stood tall. Tyler stepped back slightly. His friends straightened. Karen adjusted her sunglasses, but I could see her eyes behind the tint. She was nervous. She just didn't know why yet. I grabbed a towel. Slowly, calmly, without saying a word. Karen clicked her pen impatiently. Well, move along. I dried my arms, my shoulders, my face, and hung the towel around my neck. Then, I finally spoke. You're trespassing. Karen laughed again. We can't trespass on HOA land. I took one step forward, then another. My shadow fell across the patio. Karen, I said quietly, this is my home, my yard, my pool, my locked gate. She scoffed. Prove it. Behind me, the sliding door of my house was wide open, my furniture visible, my dog's bowl on the porch. But she was too deep in denial to see reality. I took a slow breath, and gave her what she wanted. I can prove it. She crossed her arms. Then do it. Tyler snickered. Yeah. Show us the paperwork. I didn't show paperwork. I didn't reach for documents. I didn't go inside. Instead, I reached into the towel, pulled out the one thing that would flip their world upside down. My sheriff's badge. It glinted in the sunlight, perfect and undeniable. Karen's mouth fell open. Just a little. Tyler's face turned white. The teens behind him froze like statues. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I held the badge calmly in front of me, not waving it, not showing off, just letting it exist. Karen, I said softly, I am the sheriff of this district. Silence. Even the wind stopped. You broke into a law enforcement officer's private backyard, I continued. You entered through a locked gate. You attempted to remove me from my own property. And you encouraged minors to join you. Tyler's mouth opened. Mom. Karen finally blinked. Sheriff. You're the sheriff. I nodded. Yes. And you and your son have just committed criminal trespassing. Her face drained of color. Tyler took a step back. Then another. Stumbling slightly. My mom didn't mean it, he blurted. She thought the pool was. I cut him off with one raised hand. Tyler, no one told you to walk in here. You made that choice. Karen grabbed his arm. He's a child. I shook my head. No. He's old enough to know what trespassing is. Her voice trembled for the first time. Are you going to arrest us? I didn't answer. Not yet. Because the truth was, I hadn't even decided how far I would take this. All I knew was, they finally understood who I was. And now, the real consequences could begin. What would you do if you revealed your badge and they suddenly panicked? Should the sheriff let them off or charge them? Comment your choice. Karen clutched her clipboard so tightly, I thought it might snap in half. Her sunglasses slid down her nose, revealing wide, shocked eyes that were suddenly full of fear. Tyler looked even worse. Pale, shaky, and breathing like someone who realized his entire attitude had just exploded in his face. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I simply held the badge in my fingertips, letting the sunlight reflect off it, letting the truth settle in their bones. Karen swallowed hard. I didn't know, she stammered. No one told me you were law enforcement. I shrugged slightly. You didn't ask. Tyler's voice cracked. Sir, I swear I wasn't trying to cause trouble. I looked at him calmly. You tried to kick me out of my own pool. His friends behind him whispered things like, "Oh my God, he's the sheriff. We're so dead." Tyler really messed up this time. Karen straightened her back, trying to regain even a shred of authority, but her voice still trembled. Well, Sheriff. She emphasized the word like she was suddenly speaking to royalty. I'm sure we can handle this without legal complications. I raised an eyebrow. Legal complications? She forced a laugh. Yes. A misunderstanding. A complete misunderstanding. Her eyes darted around the yard. We can forget this ever happened. There it was. The standard Karen reset button. Pretend nothing happened and hope authority magically disappears. I stepped out of the shade, letting the badge shine even brighter. Forget. I repeated slowly. You walked into my locked backyard. You ordered me out of my own pool. You told your son and his friends that the HOA outranked the law. Karen's face flushed red. I didn't mean it like that. You said you were above private property laws. That was exaggerated, she squeaked. I stared directly at her. Karen, you said, we are the law. She nearly choked on her own breath. I didn't. Well, I did, but I didn't mean. Tyler stepped forward, desperate. Sheriff, please. My mom gets stressed. The HOA stuff goes to her head sometimes. I glanced at him. And what about you? He stared at the ground. I shouldn't have tried to kick you out of the pool. I shouldn't have talked like I owned the place. I didn't know who you were. Does it matter who I am? I asked quietly. He froze. His friends froze. Even Karen froze. Because that was the point. Respect shouldn't change based on rank. But in their world, it did. Tyler swallowed and whispered, No, sir. I nodded slowly. Good. Because even if I weren't sheriff, this would still be trespassing. Karen squeezed her clipboard so hard her knuckles turned white. Sheriff, please. I have never been in trouble with the law. I can't have a criminal charge. It would ruin my career. I tilted my head. What do you do, Karen? She blinked. Well, I'm the HOA vice president. I waited. She didn't continue. Her face grew redder. That's it? I asked. She lifted her chin. That is a very important position. I bit my tongue so I wouldn't laugh. Because to her, HOA vice president was equal to being a Supreme Court justice. I stepped aside and pointed toward the gate. You and your son need to leave my property. Tyler took a step, but Karen didn't move. Wait, she said. Voice small now. You're not actually charging us, right? I paused. The teens behind her held their breath. Tyler looked like he might pass out. And Karen, her pride hung by a thread. I sighed. Karen, I'm not here to ruin anyone's life today. She blinked, relieved for a second. But I wasn't finished. However, her relief evaporated instantly. You will take responsibility. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Meaning what? She asked cautiously. You're going to apologize, I said simply. To me. But more importantly, you're going to apologize to your son. Tyler jerked his head up. Me. He pointed at himself with shock. Why me? I crossed my arms. Because you taught him that breaking rules is okay if you feel powerful. You taught him that HOA authority means you can disrespect people. You taught him arrogance instead of empathy." Karen looked like she'd been stabbed. Her lips trembled. I didn't mean to teach him that." I nodded. "Then correct it." The entire yard went silent. The teens watched with wide eyes. Tyler stared at his mother, almost hopeful. Karen's hands shook. Her pride battled her reality. She was a woman who had never apologized in her life. Not to neighbors. Not to strangers. Definitely not to teenagers. She inhaled slowly. Then she turned to Tyler. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Tyler blinked. "Mom, what?" She swallowed. Louder this time. "I'm sorry." He stared at her, speechless. Then something surprising happened. Something unexpected. Something human. Tyler stepped forward and hugged his mother. She stiffened at first, then slowly leaned into it. Her friends looked away awkwardly, not used to seeing real emotion from her. I stepped back, giving them space. It wasn't my job to humiliate them. It was my job to correct the behavior. After a long moment, Karen pulled away, wiping tears behind her sunglasses. She turned to me. "Sheriff, I apologize for trespassing." I nodded respectfully. "Apology accepted." Tyler cleared his throat. "I'm sorry for acting like I owned the pool. Or the whole neighborhood." I smirked. "Good. Because I was about 2 minutes away from making you mow my lawn as punishment." The teens burst into soft laughter, tension melting. Karen managed a tiny smile. "Are we allowed to leave now?" "Yes," I said. "And Karen?" She stopped halfway through the gate. "Yes. No more pretending the HOA is a kingdom." She sighed deeply. "Understood." As she walked away, Tyler glancing back at me with a grateful nod. The gate clicked shut. Finally, peace. Silence. My backyard was mine again. But little did they know, the story wasn't over. They were about to make a mistake far bigger than trespassing. And next time, the consequences would be real. If you were the sheriff, would you forgive them, or would you press charges? What would you do? The next morning felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that made you feel like something was coming. Something slow. Something sneaky. I stepped onto my porch with a cup of coffee. And before I even took the first sip, I noticed something taped to my mailbox. A paper. A bright orange paper. I walked closer. Pulled it off. Read it slowly. Unapproved pool activity. HOA rule violation. I almost spit my coffee out. Unapproved pool activity. In my pool. In my backyard. The same backyard that had a giant 6-foot fence around it? The same pool I paid for, maintained, and cleaned myself? I stared at the notice. Then I laughed. A slow, tired laugh. So this was how it was going to be. They wanted revenge. Not openly. Not directly. But in that classic HOA style. The passive-aggressive, ink on paper, we own you style. I turned the paper over. There was a signature. Karen. Of course. Her handwriting looked like she stabbed the pen into the paper. Bold, sharp, and angry. At the bottom, she added a note in messy, rushed writing. "We need to review your behavior. Please attend a mandatory HOA discussion today at 5 p.m. A discussion. Sure. I knew what that meant. HOA court. HOA drama. HOA theatrics. But what caught my eye was the last sentence. Your status in the neighborhood must be clarified. Status. They were still obsessed with it. Even after everything. I folded the notice, slipped it into my pocket, and went back inside. At 4:55 p.m., I walked toward the community hall. I didn't wear the badge. I didn't wear the uniform. I didn't bring anything except myself. Because I knew this wasn't about law. This was about pride. Their pride. Their bruised, cracked, fragile pride. When I entered the small meeting room, every head turned. Karen sat at the long folding table, clipboard resting in front of her. glasses perched on her nose, lips tight. Beside her sat 2 other board members, older men who always looked like they'd been offended by sunlight. Arms crossed, noses up. The classic HOA power triangle. They didn't greet me. They didn't smile. They just gestured toward a single chair in the middle of the room. A spotlight without the actual light. I walked over, sat down, and waited. Karen cleared her throat dramatically. "Sheriff," she began, saying the word like it tasted sour. "We have concerns." I nodded. "What concerns?" One of the board members leaned forward. "We received reports that you intimidated members of the community." "Intimidated?" I repeated. Karen jumped in. "Yes. Flashing your badge. Using your position to make us look bad." I raised an eyebrow. "You trespassed into my backyard." She ignored that completely. "And," she continued, "your pool behavior was confrontational." "My pool behavior?" "Yes," she said, flipping her clipboard dramatically. "You created an unsafe emotional environment." I blinked slowly. "An unsafe emotional environment?" She nodded seriously. "It's a real thing." I wanted to ask which medical journal she pulled that from, but I held back. One of the men spoke up next. "You also embarrassed Tyler. His confidence has plummeted. His friends said he felt small." I squeezed my hands together. "So we're calling accountability bullying now?" Karen stiffened. "No one said the B word." I sighed. "Karen, you tried to kick me out of my own pool. You climbed into my backyard. You declared yourself the law. And now I'm the problem." She slapped her clipboard closed. "Exactly. You see the conflict clearly." I stared at her, my voice calm. Too calm for their liking. "What exactly do you want from me?" She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms with smug confidence. "We want an apology," she said. I blinked. "You want me to apologize?" "Yes," she said sharply, "for making the HOA look unprofessional." I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not loud, just a tired, disbelieving laugh. "And if I don't?" I asked. The room tensed. All 3 board members exchanged a look. Karen smirked. "Then we will be forced to discuss a temporary suspension of your neighborhood privileges." I stared. "Neighborhood privileges?" "Yes," she said. "Pool usage, gym access, community center usage, the monthly newsletter." She said newsletter like it was the crown jewel of the entire town. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, looking her dead in the eyes. "Karen, I respect rules. I enforce rules. But I don't follow rules that are based on ego, lies, and fake power." Her jaw tightened. I continued. "I will respect the community. I will respect real regulations. But I will never apologize for defending my property. Or myself." Silence. Thick. Heavy. One of the men whispered, "We warned you." Karen raised her hand dramatically. "Sheriff," she said, "effective immediately. Your pool access is temporarily suspended." It felt like she expected trumpets to play. I leaned back in my chair. "So let me get this straight. You're suspending me from my own pool." She nodded proudly. "Yes. You understand," I said slowly, "that the HOA doesn't own my house, or my backyard, or my pool." "Yes," she said confidently, "but we own the community." I stared at her. She truly believed it. I stood up. Controlled. "You're making a mistake." Karen raised her chin. "No. We're enforcing order." I walked toward the door, stopped with my hand on the handle. Then I said it softly, without turning around. "Karen, you really should have stopped at the apology." Her chair creaked behind me. "What does that mean?" I didn't answer. I walked out, closed the door gently, and let them sit with the silence. Because if they thought the sheriff was the problem, They were about to learn what a real problem looked like. And this time, I wasn't the one in trouble. They were. If your HOA tried to suspend you from your own pool, what would you do first? Be honest. I walked out of that HOA meeting room, feeling something I didn't expect. Not anger, not frustration, not even embarrassment. I felt amused, because what they had just done wasn't legal, wasn't logical, and wasn't going to end the way they imagined. Suspending me from my own pool for unsafe emotional ambience. That one was new, even for HOA standards. The sun was setting, warm orange light spilling across the neighborhood, kids riding bikes, sprinklers clicking in the distance, dogs barking behind wooden fences. Normal life, peaceful life. But inside those beige HOA walls, a storm was brewing. I walked back home in silence. No badge, no uniform, just me. And the moment I reached my driveway, I noticed something strange. A group of neighbors stood near the sidewalk, whispering, glancing at me, whispering again. Not unfriendly, not hostile, just confused. One of them, an older lady named Mrs. Donnelly, walked up to me with a concerned face. I heard what they did to you, she said quietly. They're saying you caused a disruption. I raised an eyebrow. Is that what they're calling it now? She sighed. I've lived here 20 years. This HOA has gotten worse every year. But suspending someone from their own property? That's not a rule. They made that up. I nodded slowly. You're right. Two other neighbors joined in. A man in a baseball cap. A young mom pushing a stroller. I heard Karen's been furious all day, the man said. She told people you disrespected the community. The mom scoffed. Karen disrespects everybody. You don't see us filing reports. I smirked. So the neighborhood already knew. Rumors travel fast. But truth travels faster. Look, Mrs. Donnelly whispered. We know you're not the problem. Karen's been on this power trip for months. Someone needs to stop her. I looked at them for a moment. Their tired eyes. Their annoyed expressions. Their hopeful voices. They weren't asking for violence. They weren't asking for revenge. They were asking for fairness. Something they hadn't had in a long time. I nodded. I hear you. They smiled softly, relieved, and walked away. And I stood there, in the fading sunlight, thinking, because I wasn't planning anything dramatic. Not yet. I wasn't here to fight them. I wasn't here to take down the HOA. But if they pushed again, if they went 1 inch further, then the law and the board would meet face to face. And the outcome wouldn't be in their favor. That night, around 10 p.m., I heard a noise. Not loud, not obvious, just enough to pull my attention. A soft metallic click. A gate. My gate. I stepped outside quietly, moving through the shadows, bare feet on cool concrete, listening. Another sound. Feet on gravel. Someone was in my backyard. Again. I walked along the side of the house, keeping close to the wall, until I reached the corner. And there they were. Not one person. Not two. Three. All wearing HOA lanyards around their necks. Karen stood in the middle, holding her clipboard, acting like she was leading a military operation. The two men from the meeting flanked her, each holding small flashlights, shining them around my pool, my patio, my furniture. I stepped out of the shadows. Calm, slow, unbothered. What exactly are you three doing? Karen jumped, nearly dropping the clipboard. The two board members froze, flashlights trembling in their hands. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then Karen found her voice. We are performing a late-night compliance inspection. I blinked. At 10 o'clock at night? Yes, she said defensively. It's part of our emergency review process. What emergency? She hesitated. We haven't written it yet. I looked at the men. Neither of them met my eyes. Both looked like they deeply regretted their life choices. "So this is trespassing," I said. Karen snapped her head up. "No. This is community oversight." "On my private property," I reminded her. She lifted the clipboard like a shield. "You lost your pool privileges. We have to verify compliance with the suspension." I stared slowly, deeply, into her sunglasses, which reflected my porch light like two shaky moons. "You came here," I said, "to make sure I wasn't swimming in my own pool. At night. In the dark." She nodded confidently. "Yes. It's standard procedure." "No, Karen," I said quietly. "It's not." She opened her mouth to argue. But one of the board men whispered, "Maybe we should go." Karen shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. "No. We are not leaving until we confirm." "You are done," I said. She froze. The tone surprised even me. "Calm. Cold. Final. This is the last time," I continued. "You do not walk onto my property without permission. You do not inspect anything here. You do not step foot through this gate again." Karen's voice cracked. "You can't tell us what to do." I stepped closer, and the men stepped back. "I'm not telling you what to do," I said. "I'm telling you what the law says." Karen swallowed. "What law?" "The one that protects homeowners from harassment. The one that protects property rights. The one that punishes anyone who repeatedly trespasses after being warned." She tightened her jaw. "You wouldn't file anything." "Try me." A long, trembling silence filled the backyard. The two men nudged her gently. "We should go, Karen." She stared at me, eyes darting, mind spinning, ego cracking. Finally, she muttered through clenched teeth, "This isn't over." I nodded. "You're right. It's not." They turned around, awkward, embarrassed, and walked out through the gate. And as it clicked shut, I knew something for sure. What happened next wouldn't be petty, wouldn't be emotional, wouldn't be personal. It would be legal. And Karen was not ready for that. If you caught your HOA sneaking into your backyard at night, what would you do? Be honest. The next morning, the sky was gray, heavy, like it knew something was coming. I didn't go to work. I didn't go to the gym. I didn't go anywhere. I stayed home, not because I was scared, but because when your door is about to be knocked on by consequences, you should be there to hear it. By noon, my phone started buzzing. Not from Karen. Not from the HOA. From neighbors. "Did you hear? They're panicking. They called an emergency board meeting." I didn't reply. I was busy. At exactly 2:43 p.m., a white sedan pulled up to the curb. Official plates. No HOA stickers. A man stepped out. In a simple suit. Holding a clean folder. No attitude. No noise. Just presence. He walked up. Rang my doorbell once. And waited. I opened the door. He gave a polite nod. "Mr. Hayes." "Yes." "You've been officially served." He handed me the envelope, turned around, and left without another word. I didn't open it immediately. I just stood there, because I already knew. Inside that envelope was a copy of what I submitted at 6:19 a.m. A formal legal notice of harassment, documentation of trespassing, time-stamped video evidence from last night's inspection visit, and a request for protective order. Not against the HOA. Against 3 individuals. Karen and her 2 board members. I walked into my kitchen, sat down, and finally opened it. Stamped. Filed. Accepted. They thought it would take weeks. They thought I'd hesitate. They thought I'd try to be reasonable. I already did that. Now it was official. Now every move they made would be recorded. By lawyers. By courts. By people who don't care about HOA politics. Across the street. My neighbor slowly lifted her blinds. She'd been watching since morning. I gave her a small nod. She smiled. Because she knew. This wasn't revenge. This was a boundary with teeth. At 4:17 p.m., my phone rang again. This time, a number labeled HOA office. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. They didn't deserve my voice yet. Let them feel it. Because what they started, with power games, and parking rules, and pool privileges, they would now have to finish. In court. And Karen, she just learned something important. You don't trespass into a storm, and act surprised when it rains. If you had video proof of your HOA trespassing, would you go legal or let it slide? Be real. 2 weeks. That's how long it took. 2 weeks of quiet drive-bys. 2 weeks of blinds twitching. 2 weeks of emails I didn't respond to. They went dead silent. No flyers. No notices. No reminder letters stuck to my door. Just silence. And trust me, when an HOA goes quiet like that, you've already won. On the 15th day, a new letter arrived. But it wasn't dropped aggressively. It wasn't taped crooked. It was mailed. Postmarked. Stamped. Formal. I already knew the tone before opening it. Inside, a single page. Titled, Notice of Policy Retraction and Formal Apology. No drama. No excuses. Just facts. They admitted the so-called pool suspension was never part of any written bylaw. That their late-night inspection violated homeowner privacy policies. That their actions overstepped authority. And then the line they never thought they'd write. We hereby revoke all restrictions previously imposed and extend a formal apology for distress caused. Karen's name wasn't signed. It was the HOA president. A new one. Turns out, after my legal notice and video evidence, the board called an emergency internal review. Not to defend her. To distance from her. Karen resigned. Not retired. Not transferred. Resigned. Effective immediately. And those 2 board members, they didn't get fancy titles. They got warnings. Permanent ones. On file. With legal oversight. They lost their inspection privileges. Funny how that works. 3 days later, the neighborhood newsletter came out. No mention of me. No mention of her. Just a new paragraph under Community Updates. We are restructuring our HOA enforcement approach to prioritize respect, privacy, and lawful conduct. Translation: They got scared, and they learned. That afternoon, I stood by my pool again. Same water, same sun, same concrete. But it didn't feel the same. It felt returned. Like something that was wrongly taken had finally been put back where it belonged. Mrs. Donnelly waved from her porch. The young mom smiled, walking her stroller past. The man with the baseball cap raised his coffee cup. No cheers. No celebration. Just relief. Because it wasn't about me. It was about them. About everyone. Who'd been whispered at. Talked down to. Corrected. For no reason. Karen didn't lose her power that day. She lost her audience. And without that, power doesn't survive. I never went looking for a fight. Never wanted a villain. Never planned revenge. All I did was stop taking it. And when one person does that, others remember they can too. That night, I swam. Not to celebrate. Not to prove anything. Just because I could. And the water was calm. Like the neighborhood had finally exhaled. Have you ever stood up to someone who thought they had power over you? What happened? Tell your story.